And all this was over there. I'm like, oh Lord.
Why don't you buy me
See,
a
it
Mercedes?
looked like that. January 2nd, 6:30 p.m. City Council meeting. At this time, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance and prayer by Councilman Lawrence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father God, we give thanks that you've brought us into a new year, Father. Lord, we ask that you just give us wisdom and insight, Father, how to deal with the things that you've got in store for us to be dealt with this year. Father, we ask that you just bless us, Father, and bless our community, Father, Lord, that you give us the finances, the wisdom, and the insight of how to deal, how to cope. Lord, we ask that you just bless every city official, every city employee, from the police department, fire department, EMS, everything, Father, that you just supply us with safety and deliver us, Father, from any evil, Father. Lord, let no weapon formed against us prosper, Father. And like I said, and let me reiterate, may we once again be one nation united in liberty and freedom for all. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. At this time, we'll have questions and comments from any citizen. And I see none, so we'll move forward to the city manager's monthly report.
So I guess you're going to get to listen to me twice this month since we missed it last month. Of course, I know it's been a busy Christmas and holiday season for everybody, but it was a good one to miss. We didn't have anything on the agenda last time, but we do have some pretty good things, I think, on this agenda. But so keep in mind that we're talking about reports through November, even though we're in January now. We'll get December's updates next month. But overall, things financially are still looking good. And the general fund expenditures were over revenue, but that's still on trend. If you recall, we get one big infusion of property tax in October when all the mortgage companies pay. We get another one at the end of January when everybody, is waiting until the absolute last minute to avoid penalty. And then we get the big infusion with the industrial district contracts in the summer. So while expenditures are over revenue, we're still on trend and on budget. Expenditures are actually under budget and revenue is over budget. So overall, we're still on a good path. Water and sewer revenue is over expenditures, and it's following the 5-year trend and our average, and expenses are on budget. Sales tax in December was up 17.2%. So for the fiscal year to date that started in October, we're 16.7% over budget, and year to date, we're 2.5% over budget in a 12-month period. So we are seeing some rebound in sales tax. Of course, I'm sure that was related to the turnaround that was going on during the period. Hotel occupancy tax is, it and the venue both are above budget and above the 5-year average. Again, that's being fueled by some of the turnaround activity. So on our projects, 10th Street is still progressing, so I know that we've been talking some about that. We did finally get all the gas lines out of the way, and we're waiting on AT&T to finish moving their 2 conflicts. We hope to have that in the next 7 to 10 days. Then we'll move on to concrete stabilization and base work. So we should see that progressing. If we hold up to schedule, I think we'll be finished on the north side, moving to the south side by the 1st of April. So that's what we're looking at right now. The Buena Vista splash pad has been completed now in Buena Vista Park, so that'll be ready to be turned on after the winter is over. I know they do a polar plunge. I don't know if we do a polar sprinkle or something, but for now it's turned off, and we'll hold on that till the weather gets a little warmer later in the year. We did get our 90% plans back on our Main Street pass-through park, so that's looking pretty good. We'll have our final ready for that. We should be bidding that out later this month, with the council awarding that construction in February. If everything goes according to schedule, we do anticipate that to be finished by mid to late June, just in time for our 4th of July celebrations downtown. So that's looking pretty good. There's some pictures that I've sent out, and we'll have more on that when we award the bid. But that's coming. We did get the contract, or the agreement worked with Hipshot. So if you see them out there, they're putting the ephes on their side of the building that was exposed to finish that up. And we'll have that done before we start the park project. So we're going to start seeing some movement down there, so that's good. We also had a meeting, and we've got our 90% plans on the Rock Creek sewer crossing. If you recall, we've been having the pylons were failing back behind. That's back behind O'Reilly's going down towards the sewer plant. So that's the main feed line in there. So we've been working on the engineering on that. That has been completed, and along with the 3rd Street stormwater, where, if you recall, after all that rain last year, we started washing out some of the road and the stormwater structure there under 3rd Street going towards the wastewater plant. So
we'll be putting those out to bid probably in March. They'll be ready this month, but we're gonna delay it just a little bit. The winter's not a good time to bid construction projects like that, so we're gonna hold off just a little bit for some more favorable timing. We're also gonna include the additive alternate for the Bryan Street that we were scheduled to do this year, but we delayed after the crossing. So just in case we get favorable pricing, or depending on what the timing is, we might be able to award that and push it into next year, but they'll have those 3 parts on it, so we are working on that. We are finishing up designs for this year's phase of the City Hall renovation. That'll include bathrooms and front entry, replacing the accessible entryways and doing some improvements outside. It's also gonna include some hallway work on the admin side. We're gonna make it a little easier. We're gonna reduce a bunch of doorways and just go to 2 main doors on that admin side, because, you know, it's kind of like a guessing game when people come in to see us on that side of the hallway. We're also in that phase gonna design a couple other enhancements that we'll bid it all out. The way this project's going, it might be bid late enough in the year that we can award 2 fiscal years worth of work under the same project. But we're gonna talk about updates to this room and the council conference room, as well as the stairways. So the whole package will include bathrooms, front entrance and lobby, council room, council conference room, and stairways in this phase of it, which will get some of the bigger issues. And then we do have that, you know, scheduled for multiple years going forward, just as we have funding. But that's where we're at on that project. As far as departments go, of course, we've completed the transition in municipal court, so Michelle Burkhammer is now kind of the record specialist, is her technical title, so she's kind of starting to learn from Stella as we get you know, ready for future changes, but not in a hurry over there. So we've reduced the court down to 1 clerk from 2 clerks, and so they're now open 7:30 to 5:30 Monday through Thursday. So we put them on a fixed schedule. From what we've seen so far, we've actually had quite a few people take advantage of that 30 minutes before 8 and that 30 minutes after 5 to give them a little bit of time after hours to make contact with the court. So that seems to be working pretty well. The judge has been coming in on Thursdays, so that meets well with that. So Michelle is starting her training, learning on civic clerk. She's probably, whether or not she knows it, she's probably going to get to test her hand at writing the minutes for this meeting. And of course, we do have an election coming up, so the election filing period has posted. It doesn't start until the 17th of January is when it starts, but we have made those postings, so you can start getting ready to see those action items. This year is place.
Do what?
That was last year.
That was last
We
year.
were last year.
I think mine is, I think so. Yeah.
Just one.
It's posted, and we'll have the official documents in front of us before too long, you know, but that is coming up.
We will have it all ready to announce and go.
It'll be Stella. As in stellar, Stella.
There you go.
Now, that's some of the reason to get that transition with Michelle over here is, you know, Stella's handled the bulk of election activities for a long time.
Yeah.
Wisely paid.
And that's something that really takes kind of repetition and a few years' practice. So while we're not in a hurry for Stella to leave, I also don't want to throw them under the bus like Stella was when she started having to do that. So we want to get Michelle some practice with there, but we do appreciate all the work that they're about to have to start doing. I know this is Stella's favorite time of the year coming up. But I don't feel that sorry after she just took 2 weeks off, so she should be. Of course, HR has been busy with our switch, you know, benefits changed as of January 1st to the new benefit package. For the most part, that seems to be going okay, you know, other than just a few little hiccups here and there that we kind of anticipated going forward. But everybody's been honoring most of the things. I've got my new card and all that, so that's good. Just a few little transitions moving our benefit cards, the HRA, HSA money, and we knew we'd have that period where there might be a period. So Michelle's been working Michelle Crump has been working really hard on that, and in addition to keeping up with payroll and all that stuff. We also kind of talked about finance a little earlier, but I think HR and finance should, so we had a hard drive fail on our server 2 weeks ago. 3. It cost us 2 days worth of data
Oh dear.
and 3 days of not being able to accept payments or manually accepting payment. You know, we put in our manual processes, but they weren't automated. So finance and Michelle have been working extra, putting in, making sure all the data, because we ran a payroll. We did get the payroll process, but then we had to revert it back to a period before the payroll was run. So she technically had to rerun it twice, which was the same thing with utility billing, having to rerun bills, but we got that all taken care of. We are delaying some late notices. We didn't add late fees for the 2 cycles that were impacted during that, and we're not, and extending, of course, we don't shut off during the Christmas holiday anyway, but, so we're, of course, the ironic part is, you know, we've been working on moving our financial customer service, all that software into the cloud to prevent things like that. We're scheduled to switch over February 22nd or 24th. So the solution to this problem has been pending and is 2 months away from being implemented. The server just decided not to wait that long. Also, the auditor will be back January 8th for our field work. For the second half of our field work, he's scheduled to present the audit during the first meeting of second meeting of April. On time.
Yeah, that's
So
crazy.
I know it seems like it's really short since we just got the last audit, but the last audits have been so late that we're
Yeah.
finally getting back to our normal. So we will have the 2023 audit in front of you in April, and like I said, he'll be back next week, and I'm sure that Terry and the financial team are super excited about that. Fire department's also been busy. They got 3 firefighters through the mental health training. They also did a CPR class for the dispatch work session the dispatch hosted for the regional dispatchers. We'll talk a little bit more about that in their section. They also were able to get the 1951 Engine 5 back and operational, and I think if you were at the parade, you got to see it down in the parade. So I think it's kind of a good PR, public outreach tool to kind of have that back, and I've had some pretty good feedback, and the firemen are pretty excited about that. Actually, one of them handmade the leather ladder straps so that they could make sure that the ladder was on it in the parade. So firefighter Prieto also completed his associate's degree through Emerald College during the last month, so we're glad anytime that people are investing in themselves and continuing with that professional development. Aaron Gibbs completed 2 certifications through the Texas Commission on Fire Protection as well, and Chief Hall completed his Fire Officer 3, so lots of development going on there. Mitigation, the fire department also completed the 7-mile burn. That's their big burn module just south of town in November. That's part of the fire mitigation program. Help protect that southern exposure from any fires coming towards the Fritch area. So that's spanned 2 counties and involved a lot of departments. So we're definitely proud of everybody's cooperation and benefit in that. And then we did also get our FireWise recertification. So we still remain FireWise certified as the first and only whole city to maintain that certification. In emergency management, the dispatchers did complete, you know, they scheduled and hosted that dispatch workshop, which was the first time for anybody in the region. Regionally, they can have some difficulty finding training classes for dispatchers, so they had 37 regional attendees attend that. So 37 different dispatchers from the region, so we're excited to welcome them to Borger and provide some of that. The weather radar was actually operational now that we've been partnering with Pantex with. So there's just a few little testing and some final up things, but we should be getting reimbursed for that pretty quick, and it is up just in time for the winter weather and be ready to go for the severe weather season this spring. So we have IT was kind of busy. We had a little social media incident from a posting that was an incident of ours but didn't involve an officer of ours, which generated over 80 threatening phone calls.
Wow.
So they spent a lot of the last month trying to get some information on that as we work through the criminal charges that could be associated with that, because they were definitely above and beyond what would be somebody expressing their opinion.
Yeah.
They've also been working with the INCO transition, and then of course after the failure, having to get that back and working. So Public Works, of course the Parks Department especially, appreciate all their extra work for the Christmas tree and the Christmas lights and all of the Christmas decor around the city. That takes a lot of effort on their behalf. But they've been, I did notice it didn't take them long to get that Christmas tree down. I think they're probably just ready to have it back in storage as they already go up. And then, of course, there was a lot of work from Public Works, pretty much the entire department, helping assemble the ice rink.
Yeah.
The ice rink had a little over, so far, 1,700 people attend. Well, 1,700 people skate. I haven't looked at the attendee count. I think it was over 3,000 last time I looked. So it seems like for about every one person skating, there's 3 to 4 watching,
Yeah.
which I'd be in that ball.
I tried it.
So, recreation has been busy as well. They hosted 3 days worth of pickleball each week, through November. They also supported the Salvation Army kickoff for their Red Kettle campaign. And they, a little less important now, but they did have extended Christmas hours over the Christmas break, so they've been doing some things out there, so that's been nice. Public Works also assisted with the, in solid waste with the limb pile that we burned out at the limb pile, getting ready for the spring cleaning that'll inevitably come up pretty soon. And we also did get 100 new poly carts and 100 new dumpsters in, so we'll start slowly distributing those as needed. We're pretty good at replacing problematic dumpsters, but I'll just kind of remind everybody, there's no guarantee you'll get a new dumpster. Remember, we do repair dumpsters too. We've got 108 budgeted this year. We might try to sneak some more in if we got some surplus, but there are 4,200 dumpsters in town, so,
So we'll start filling these dumpsters right away next month?
They'll go through the list if they've been keeping a list, but they try to keep them in reserve and replace them as something fails or something definitely needs it. They're not just because you want a new dumpster.
Yeah, well, I'm just hearing constituent complaints. So
Yeah.
I was asking, so.
Well, and a lot of the complaints, we do repair bottoms, and when bottoms and stuff comes out, but a lot of times it's not necessarily because it looks bad or the lid won't completely close, or, we need it to be pretty. But we have been out for a little bit, so there's been some on the back list, so we did get those 100 in, so they should start being distributed. So in streets, of course, we've been busy with potholes. The winter weather has not been very kind to the roadways in some of those areas, so they've been trying to keep up with that, along with paving some alleys. And we also got East Jefferson graded, which is one of the few non-paved streets in town over there on the far east side. They're also busy crack sealing the streets that are going to be seal coated in next year's seal coat project, getting those prepped. And of course, they've been trying to keep up with the potholes on 10th Street and some of that as we continue with that. Service Center, we did complete our Purple Wave auction, bringing in about $108,000 through what we've been auctioning off. That included the old sewer vac truck and the old pothole patcher, so we're slowly catching up on some of that as we've been getting some new equipment in. And of course, Wes and Brendan both did have a lot of work involved in the 1951 fire truck and getting it ready for the parade, and I think that's been a fun project for them, but we of course appreciate their help for that. The police department animal control completed their fence and their tile project, so we're slowly tiling the kennels in there, and then they added a fence in the unloading area so that as they unload bigger dogs or try to get animals out of the vehicles into the shelter, they are contained in case they get loose. So I know they're excited about that. A lot of their officers also went through the mental health class with the fire department. Of course, lots of parades and other events to be involved with. During that time period, Lieutenant Guzman completed his Cellbrite training and certification, which is on our cell phone investigation. If you remember, we're one of the few departments that has the cell phone analysis capability in the region, so that's been a good benefit for us. A lot of that is the actual DA helps fund some of that training, and so we split that because we do a lot of the cell phone analysis for the entire judicial district, since we're one of the few that have that capability, so that's good. They are processing the background of one certified police applicant, and they also did put their drone up and get some pretty good footage of that 7-mile burn that the fire department was working on. So, in utilities, we're back on the test hole schedule for the Northwest well field that we hope to have those done in the first part of July. So, first part of January, like soon. So hopefully we'll get the flow rates we need. Like I said, last time we did find water. We just tested it a little lower than what we'd like, so we've refined our location as we try to pinpoint where we want those 2 wells to go. So we definitely want those wells are gonna cost the same amount of money no matter how much water they produce, so it's beneficial to us to make sure that we can find a location that produces the most water. We did have a leak in the west well field. That's the oldest well field, so they've been replacing, or they did replace 40 to 60 feet of well field line out there. Of course, that supplies a smaller portion of our water, and of course, with the turnarounds, it didn't impact any of that.
The west is different from the Stinnett?
Yeah.
There's the Stinnett well field, there's the northwest well field, and there's the west well field. The west well field is what used to be DeGoose's.
Okay.
And so the city, and I'm not for sure of the detail, that was wasn't way before my time, but it was done since Eddie was city manager, but DeGoose turned all of that over to the city. I think because it needed some investment and they didn't want to put the investment.
So we get our water from 4 well fields, Roberts and R3.
Right. And then lake water.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, lake water for,
Yeah, so in theory, we have 5 supply sources that we switch and back and forth depending on need and use. But our potable water is all well water.
right.
In planning and development, code enforcement's been catching up on weeds, and I think we've sent out, have to double check, but as Johnny Laddick, our new code enforcement officer, has been more comfortable, and he's been on for about 3 months now, so we're trying to catch up on a lot of that and getting some things progressed. I think, you're gonna see a lot more progress and effectiveness out of that. We're getting ready to start gearing up on demolitions now that the weed growing season is out, so the crew can focus on some of those, and they've got some of those plans. We've seen a massive uptick in solar permits with people adding solar to their house. I know Councilman Uli has taken care of some of that. That's also sometimes one of our biggest headaches is the big company's not very good about scheduling, and then we get put in the middle between the homeowner and the scheduler, or the people that, because they'll call and schedule an inspection, we'll show up and they won't be there. And then so we'll leave, and then they won't get it passed and won't get the power turned back on, and it's been kind of a back and forth, but we're running into some issues there, trying to figure out how to deal with some of that. And we did get 402 Butadieno was demolished in November, and we did complete the 11th Street demolition. So that one has the appeal time period extended, and that's actually, it's cleaned up pretty nice. I think if you get back over there, it's somewhat clean. Public engagement. When we were first starting with this, Diddy DJ was gone, so she typed it all up, but now she's back, so. But we did complete our Sip and Shop holiday tour on December 2nd. Had lots of good positive feedback from that. I think that was a really good way to expose people to the stores and businesses that we have and the products that you can get in this town.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely be doing some of that. They're planning to kind of do another one in conjunction with the Downtown Moonlight Madness, so that you can kind of tie into that with Pink Friday and Small Business Saturday. And so we've also got a couple other bus tours planned. You'll see what posted the Welcome Wagon tour, so we're going to try to start doing those quarterly, which gives like new residents an opportunity to come and take a tour, let us show you some about the community, where things are, what you can get, where you can go to the parks, things like that. So we're definitely excited about that. We did our holiday window art contest. Was kind of a variation on the dumpster art, so we partnered with the downtown merchants, and they gave us some windows, and then we had the submissions. So definitely a lot of nice holiday themed art downtown. I think that really helped with the Christmas season downtown. So we're gonna try to do that seasonally, maybe get that, so we'll get some spring window decor coming up here before long. Although I will remind everybody, it's just now really winter. So I don't wanna hear too much complaining just yet, because, we're only like 2 weeks into winter, so spring's still a ways off. Of course, a lot of work between Nicole and Deidre on decorating the dome for the Winter Wonderland, or whatever you want to call it.
It looked good.
Councilman Perez and Mayor Felker donated some of their reserve funds to help turn that into what I thought turned out to look really nice. It was,
That was beautiful.
And it was fun.
I
tried it. I went around one time.
I bet you I did it twice.
we've also finished our 2024 list, city-sponsored event listing, so you're going to start seeing that. We're going to try to start putting that out in as far in advance, so we kind of can help attract sponsors and get everybody on the same page for what we're doing. we've just about got that resident guide finished. I think I sent y'all a draft or showed you kind of a draft, which, you know, is city services, things to do, things like that. Just some good information that people need to know if they're a new or existing resident that just doesn't know. And they're the welcome wagon dates we got scheduled. So the first welcome wagon is going to be February 28th. So if you're new or you just have decided you don't want to live under your rock anymore, we'd love to welcome you into the welcome wagon and show you what's out there. Especially if you think there's nothing to do with no events going on, we definitely would like you to come ride the wagon, and we'll definitely correct you on that. So, of course, Deidre and Nicole both put a lot of work into the employee appreciation banquet in December, and so that turned out really well. We had lots of good feedback from our employees. I was happily proven wrong.
Garrett said he wants an 80s theme next year.
I
Yes.
don't know that that's exactly
That'd
what
be
I
fun.
said.
Is that the 1880s or?
That would probably be more of my style. But when she asked me if we could theme it, you know, I was like, well, sure, but, you know, don't be disappointed if nobody shows up themed. And I do think we had probably more people themed than we had not themed, so.
I didn't think, but I got in trouble for it.
But it was definitely a good evening celebrating our employees and the work and everything that we've done to achieve this year. So we've got 2 community garage sales scheduled for 2024. So the first one's January 27th, and then again June 15th. So those are the free sales at the Dome where you just kind of bring your stuff and can be one central location. We did a couple of those last year that have pretty good positive feedback on.
We do have locks on the doors to our tables, so they don't put greasy motor stuff on our nice clean
We are
tables.
we are not including tables and chairs anymore, so they will
Okay.
all be locked up and not accessible.
Okay,
That was some of the lessons learned. I will, you know, just remind the community and us, remember, this is free. We're giving you the space to do that. I mean, we want to do it as a community service, but, you know, it's not the same as the people that rent and help offset the costs in that, so.
and we don't want greasy transmissions for sale on our dining table.
Yeah. Then also, starting this month, and every month, we're gonna host the second Saturday car cruise. So we've had lots of feedback from that, so we're gonna car cruise Maine just once a month. Everybody can come out and kind of have a good nostalgic time. Keep up with that. We'll have a 1951 fire truck in the car cruise, and
We've got food trucks that will come too.
so I think that's what, when we do them like that and we schedule and you get multiple generations, they do really turn into a nice event, and everybody pretty much maintains themselves. And if the chief can find it, I've told him, you know, he doesn't want to be outdone by the fire department, so if we can find a, you know, 1960s boat with an appropriate, barely able to be seen flashing light, you know. But I was also giving the fire department a hard time. I didn't know that they had such nifty contractions in the 50s to where your emergency light and your siren's the same piece of equipment. I don't know if you noticed all that, but it's just got the one little red light in front of the siren on the fender. So we've changed a little bit. Then we've back to working on our Keep Texas Beautiful affiliate status as we work through some of those things. It's definitely a busy November. Next month you'll hear about December is an even busier December, and a pretty good year overall. So that's all I have. I'll entertain any questions that anybody might have.
Thank you.
That's good, thank you.
If there's nothing else, then we'll move on to the consent agenda, items 6, 7, and 8. If there's no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve consent items 6 through 8.
Second.
And all in favor? And they're passed. And moving to item 9, receive a presentation and then consider and take appropriate action to introduce on first reading ordinance O-001-23, establishing a residential homestead tax exemption. Mr. Spradley.
So, you know, we've been discussing with the council, well, actually, we've been talking about property taxes for several years as we've, you know, tried to impact those rates and be mindful and fastidious in our use of taxpayer funding. And so after last budget year, staff started looking at, we got some numbers in, and I'll just kind of go through this, because when you see the numbers, we can start seeing where this discussion kind of started from. So if you look at our appraised value over the last 5 years, it's, our total appraised, freeze adjusted appraised value has gone up by 20% in the last 5 years. Now, a lot of things have gone up, and I don't want to necessarily say that's necessarily bad, because when we get to the next slide, in that same period, the city council has responded by continually to drop our tax rate. So in that same period, our tax rate has decreased by 25%. So even though our appraised values have gone up by 20%, our tax rate's gone down by 25. So we've actually, increased a lower tax rate. Now, when we start looking at the impact of what that's done in that same period, if you just look at last year from 2022 to 2023, our tax rate decreased by about 10%. The average appraised value of a residential home increased by 9%. So the average tax levy for a residential home of average value didn't change, even though our total tax levy decreased by 6%. So what that shows is that the commercial properties received a lower, of the property tax value, the commercial properties were a less increase than the residential properties. And so our residential value is 453 million of that 511, or 87%. So what that means is 13% of our appraised value has been seeing the majority of the benefit of the lower tax rate. So that's kind of what got us thinking of how can we maybe be more fair with our tax policy so that we're not giving all of the benefit to the commercial side to where we can spread it around. Now, that's not to say the residents haven't, if we'd kept the same rate, their taxes would have gone up. So the fact that it's been staying the same or even gone down a little bit, and we'll see later, it has gone down some over 5 years, but just last year, this is kind of what we started looking at going, something, what can we do to be a little more fair? So of course, the Texas tax code allows us to give a residential homestead exemption of an amount up to 20% of the appraised value for individuals that use that home as their primary residence. So when we talk about this, I will say this does not impact senior tax freezes, disabled tax freezes, or all of those. This would be just over that and would apply to anybody that has a residential homestead. Of course, to be a residential homestead, these are people that are living in this community. So these people have a bigger impact on our community and call it home. So what don't apply to these are rental properties, Airbnbs, apartments, things like that. So these are people that actually own their home and live in the home that they own. When we look at other homestead exemptions in the county, Hutchinson County gives a 20% tax exemption right now. So does Frank Phillips College. The school district's different. They're handled by state law. There is a homestead exemption, and that's state designated. Of course, this year it went up significantly, which is why I think most people's tax bills, they saw a pretty significant decrease, was due to that state increase. Right now, the only two that do not offer an exemption is the city of Borger and then Hutchinson County Hospital District. Of course, we don't offer an exemption yet, but I will say we're also the only entity in that period, other than the school district that's been regulated by the state, that has seen their rate decrease. So we have been taking that into consideration.
Yes.
So what this ordinance does is it would propose a 20% as the exemption from the ad valorem tax, which is the maximum allowed. If the 20% exemption does not generate $5,000, there's a $5,000 minimum. So if your house doesn't, if the value doesn't produce at least a $5,000 savings, you're going to get a $5,000 savings. So that's
20% or $5,000, whichever's more.
right.
Right, okay.
Which is ever more. So you have to have at least $5,000 off. So pretty much if you've got a house valued less than 50, you're pretty much not going to be paying city taxes, because we've got to give you the $5,000 exemption. And then if you're a joint or community owner of the property, you can't both receive the exemption. So, there's only one exemption on a property. So if for whatever reason you've got a court order or you get two different tax statements, You can't apply it both. You can't say, well, I get a 20% and then they live with me, so they get another 20%, so we get 40% off. It's no more than 20. And so the exemption would apply to the tax year beginning January 1st, 2024, because, the appraisals that they're going to do that we'll get this year will actually be used in our budget for next year. So what this looks like for the city. So for these comparisons, I'm assuming that everybody's appraisal stays exactly the same as it was this year. Now, that will change, but this gives you an even comparison. So really, when you look at 2024 numbers in this, what we're saying is this is what 2023 would have looked like if we'd had a homestead exemption. So that 20% homestead exemption would have reduced our appraised value from $511 million to $485 million, which would have been a 5% decrease in our total appraised value. That would have driven the no new revenue rate up, which is the revenue that the tax rate, which would generate the exact same amount of revenue. It would have also driven up the voter approval rate and then that adopted rate. So if we had passed the homestead exemption and we wanted to adopt a rate to generate the same amount of money, instead of a 0.647, we would have had to adopt a 0.6809 tax rate. Of course, that would generate the same amount of money because we're given that exemption. The difference is there you see that the total residential levy for the city would have been $2.9 million, which is 6% less, but the total commercial levy would have gone up by 11%. So you can see there the breakdown of how much more value the residential property is in this community than the commercial property. But now so what that looks like in a dollar value is, so on that average home in 2023, the average home value was $78,500. So at that new adopted rate, the estimated taxes would be $434. But if we apply that homestead exemption, that 20% homestead exemption on the average home in Borger would be worth $9,700, which would lower the taxable value to $62,800. So now the estimated tax value on the average home would be $427.65, which would be $107 less a year. Now remember, this last year we reduced the tax rate, but the average homeowner saw no savings. So by adding a homestead exemption and then raising the tax rate, the average homestead homeowner would see a tax decrease. Now when we look at this over different home values, this is just kind of the same calculations, just depending on what your home value is. So on a $100,000 home would see $102 a year change. A $350,000 home would see $359.54. So since the rate went up, you mitigate how much those higher earnings get. So it is a percentage, so they get a little bit more, but it's not exorbitantly more. A $50,000 house is almost 4 times, but it's just a little over 3 times the property tax savings. So it is just a little bit more fair. Now what that looks like for non-homesteads, so these are rental properties or non-homestead properties, $100,000 home would now be paying $33 more a year. That $350,000 home would be paying $117,000 a year. Now I can tell you there are not many $350,000 homes in this community that are not homestead. Those just aren't the type of investment properties you have in this community. But you can see the impact's not a whole lot, all things considered, on the non-homestead. So the homestead saving $102 more, the non-homestead is paying $33. And a lot of that's because we've got way more non-homesteaded than we do homesteaded. But there again, we get more benefit from those people that own a home and live here than off of, the short-term rentals or the rental property. Now, if it is rental property, that could impact rental rates, but we're talking $50 a year divided by 12, even if they pass that evenly through, that's $4 a month. I don't think what we're doing, is going to be drastically impactful on that. And remember, we still set the rate every year, just like we always do, so this council will have to take more action later this year to determine what the final rate is and what that impact will be. When you look at commercial impact, remember, they're taking the biggest impact from what the average tax would be, but they're also have received the biggest value over the last 5 years. So if you've got a commercial property that's valued at $150,000, your change between 2023 and 2024, your new change with the exemption in place would be $50 more a year. But your change from 2018 would still be $273 less than you were paying in 2018. So that person in 2018 was paying $1,295 in taxes. The rate we adopted last year, they're now paying $971 in taxes. So in 4 years, they saved $323. If we added a homestead exemption and adopted the same rate that would generate the same amount of money, their taxes would now be $1,021, which is $50 more a year. So there again, like I said, they're still saving $273 from what they paid in 2018. And then you see that kind of going down for the different values. So a homestead tax exemption, it does shift the tax burden. It gives the benefit to the homestead residents and shifts the burden to the non-homesteads and the commercial. But overall, like I said, the total residences, including the homesteads, have been not receiving as much of the benefit from the lower tax rate over the last 5 years as the commercial. So even by putting in the homestead exemption, everybody's still, I think, going to end up better. So, questions?
I've got one. In order to claim the 2024 homestead, they would have had to already filed as a homesteader, right?
They have to be in that homestead January 1.
So when do they fill out the paperwork to receive that funding? Do they have to already, can they do it?
They can still fill it out as long as they're in
The home.
in the home, as long as the ownership hasn't
guideline for that,
changed.
so,
Yeah.
Because some people, I don't know, I have, but, you know, some people, well, maybe it's not worth it. Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah. Well, especially now, because that especially on the school district side, if you don't have a senior tax freeze or something like that, the homestead's definitely worth it. And we'll put out some more information about that, you know, as it gets closer, as we do this. But you've got to pass it first.
Right.
Not that I think you won't, you know, but.
I can't wait to get on here. So.
Other questions?
No, if there's no questions, then I'll entertain a motion.
I move to introduce on first reading ordinance 0-001-24, establishing a 20% residential homestead property tax exemption.
Second.
All in favor? And it passes.
I said I couldn't wait.
And moving on to item 10, consider and take appropriate action on a cooperative agreement concerning the use and abuse of controlled substances under the provision of 21 USC and 873 between the City of Borger and the United States Department of Justice Drug Enforcement Administration. Mr. Davis, Chief Davis, sorry.
Good evening, Council. So the police department was contacted a few weeks ago by the DEA office in Amarillo, and we're wanting to visit with us about adding a task force officer with their regional task force. So what this does is the police department has an employee that is attached or assigned to their task force, and they do the work with the DEA as far as combating the drug issues and other things on a wider scale. It's beneficial to the city to do this, in my opinion, because it broadens our scope. If we just focus on arresting people that have the user or street level people, we're never going to do anything and make it in on the drug problem except arresting the same people over and over again, which we've seen. In doing this, it helps us be able to go after the dealers and the larger dealers, even in other areas, even across state lines, and makes it where our officer has the ability and the authority to do that, to help us make a bigger impact on the drug problem that we see. I will say that this opportunity has been presented to us due to the hard work by our officers. Our officers have dedicated themselves to being professional and working hard and combating our drug issues that we see here in our community. And if it wasn't for the hard work that they do on a daily basis, we would not have this opportunity. Now, in doing this, the benefit that we get, obviously, is being able to a further reaching scope as far as our drug investigations. It gives us more resources to be able to combat the drug problem. It also gives us the ability to push some of our prosecutions for our larger dealers to a federal level, which increases the ability to have larger sentences or harsher sentences for the more serious offenses. And also, we get a lot of additional training for our officer that would not be available to them just due to cost and other hindrances that we have. So it's a lot of benefits for us, and also gives us the ability, like I said, for the enhanced prosecution. Now, this would be utilized, if approved, this position would be utilizing a position that we have now that we're not using in our CID division. So it would not be adding a position, it's using a position that we already have, just reallocating that position. My opinion is it's very beneficial for us, and I think that it would be a good thing for the city for us to pursue this agreement. And I'm happy to entertain any questions that you may have.
I would just reiterate kind of what the chief said, but this would not be possible without the relationships and the activities that the department has made over the last several years with other federal agencies and the cases they have been making. They especially have been working hard in the background. You know, I know that just because you don't see things doesn't mean we're not doing anything. A lot of these cases, it's better to keep quiet as we try to work them up into the federal level. And without that improvement and without that professionalism, without building those relationships, this would not be an option. And the fact that the DEA reached out to us, I think, is a very big pat on the back for them. There are only 3 other local agencies that have been invited to be a member of this task force. So and they're all in Amarillo.
Yeah.
So it's either the state or Amarillo, and now the opportunity with Borger. So this does send a big message that, you know, if you're operating here, you don't have to just deal with us. You also might have to deal with the DEA.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got one question. That's
Yes, sir.
I just now thought about this. I know we'll be paying the salary and stuff, but do we also supply a vehicle?
Yes, a vehicle will be one of the things we supply as a vehicle for the officer to use, which we have a vehicle allocated along with the CID position that would be utilized for that, so that it wouldn't require an additional purchase of a vehicle. We already have the vehicle that'll be used.
They work very much as a group, so in reality, that vehicle probably have less wear and tear in the task force situation than if it was an individual detective, because they will work very collaboratively. Like the agreement says, we'll cover the salary, but they will reimburse up to $18,000 worth of overtime. So if he's required overtime because of their other activities, they'll cover that. So there's really not a cost. There's not any additional cost to us. I mean, we'd be spending most of this money, whether it was a detective or a TFO. So it's just kind of a matter of how we're organizing it. And so I think, you know, everybody on this council and the community always kind of reiterates, you know, drug enforcement and drug issues. So I do think this is, you know, a movement in the direction of our goals and strategic plans. And so there's not really a cost downside. When we get to the next item, we'll talk about a possible cost upside, but there is no cost downside. The only downside is yes, we take a Borger PD officer and he gets temporarily assigned under the DEA and under their supervision. But he will be working cases regionally and cases here that have an impact on the, you know, like we said earlier, drugs are a regional problem. So you make a big bust in Amarillo, it impacts supply here. So having all of that just works. You know, you can't just address it in one place. We didn't talk about this earlier. I will say that this is a federal task force formed under federal guidelines, which is completely different than the previous task force that used to be in place in the Panhandle that you might have heard or referred to as Tulia. So I don't want anybody to have any concerns about this. This is not that at all. It just has a same terminology, but that was a statewide, regional, local task force. This is a federal task force following federal guidelines,
As
which.
the DEA.
Yes.
Yeah, yes.
So, the other one that is somewhat infamous now was not a DEA task force, and was not related to the DEA, which is probably why it ended up the way that it did, but this is not that.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
I noticed that it is under the strategic pillar of housing, which is.
Providing safe neighborhoods for
Yeah,
people that want to live
absolutely,
here.
which
and-
makes sense.
The officers are dedicated to trying to find as many solutions as possible to curb, our drug issues as well as the other crimes that come along with drug
Yeah.
use.
Drug
And
use.
trying to make that less accessible and less profitable for the dealers that are doing that is one of our main goals.
And like I said, I can't say this enough because I hear it a lot, and I know the council knows, and I know you see it some, but like I said, we don't have this opportunity because we don't do anything to
Yes,
combat the drug
absolutely.
problem. We do this because we do it well and proficiently and professionally detailed at a bigger level than
Yeah.
anybody else in the region, which is why we're getting this opportunity. So just because you don't see it or it's not out there, it has been, and this is part of that.
That's nice to hear, too.
And basically, the DEA has operational control of our officer. We maintain administrative control.
Yes, sir.
But if we needed some help, we wouldn't just necessarily get our officer back. We might get a whole DEA team.
Yes, sir.
If it rises to that level of interest.
Yeah, quite possibly. It makes it where we're a priority, basically.
Can we get the intel that they have that we don't have?
Yes, sir.
Even without their help and even without them working cases, the federal, just access to federal intel, to me, is probably worth.
Does anyone else have anything for Chief?
Nah.
If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the cooperative agreement concerning the use and abuse of controlled substances between the City of Borger and the United States Department of Justice Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, and authorize the Chief of Police to execute any and all necessary documents related to the same.
Second.
All in favor? And it passes. Thank you, Chief. And item 11 will be, Chief, also, consider and take appropriate action to authorize the execution of the fiscal year 2024 asset forfeiture sharing agreement between the City of Borger Police Department and the DEA Amarillo ROHIDTA Task Force Group. Chief.
So one of the things you'll notice with the federal government is they really like their abbreviations for things. So that's
Sure
kind
do.
of, you see that there.
RO is regional office, by the way, but,
It's not reverse osmosis?
well, it is at my house, but.
So what this is a part of the last agreement, but it's a separate item on here. But what this does is gives us the ability to enter into an asset forfeiture agreement with them. What that does is asset forfeiture is a tool that's given to law enforcement at a local, state, and federal level. And what it does is if you have the people that are found to be, selling drugs, doing the major things, it makes it where you can seize their assets that are either profits of that or being used for that. On the level, doing this through with the federal government, what it does is give Borger the ability to, if our officer is there part of the task force and something they're involved in, they do a seizure that comes up with a forfeiture that is monetary value. It gives us a portion of that. So it gives us the ability to kind of be able to take some of the proceeds from that to use towards things that we need to do here as an agency to further our cause as far as the drug enforcement.
We do already have the appropriate accounts set up. We do asset forfeiture on our own, although at probably a much reduced level. And there's no guarantee on how much we'll get out of this. And we're not entering into this agreement for the revenue. We're not planning on any revenue to offset any costs. We've budgeted and planned for it to be taken care of out of our regular operating budget. So anything that we might get will just be a bonus. And those funds are restricted in the seizure asset to law enforcement training and law enforcement type ideas. So it gives the law enforcement some, Captain Sims back there will like it a lot because he won't have to come justify his next drone quite as much if he's got the money in the asset seizure fund. So it makes some of those discussions with me a little easier if it comes out of that fund than it does out of our operating budget, so.
And it's beneficial because it takes the proceeds from the people that are supplying the drugs to our community, and it takes that profit away from them and turns it into a positive, because then we can use it as something to combat the problem in the future without having to use money from the budget. So.
And maybe, we can get one of those really cool callers that get to say, brought to you by your local regional drug supplier. I'd rather have the money, but.
We can use what we get.
The revenue is restricted to anti-drug efforts.
Yes, sir. Yeah, there's several restrictions in there and checks and balances to ensure that it's used properly. Yes, sir.
Good. Again, I would just like to kind of, reiterate all of this is just some more side effects to our putting, development and professionalism first, and the desire to want to be the best. And so this is a good reward and pat on the back for them that we are being recognized at that regional level for meeting the qualities that the federal government sees in a
Yeah,
prosecutable
that's-
case.
And that's due to the work that the officers put in on a day-to-day basis and the high level that they work at to achieve, so.
And as we talk about maintaining our Firewise status, having the #2 wildland program in the country, being the Community of the Year, being our Texas Municipal Excellence Award, there are just things that we continue to do on a daily basis for the long term that don't always show immediately. And this is definitely one of those that's had the foundation probably laid 3 years ago.
It's like one of those things, you are who you are when nobody's watching. And like your men are serving so well that they got recognized.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
by them, meaning the city also.
And this helps with recruitment and retention. Where are we at strength-wise?
I think that if we don't include the positions that we currently are pending to fill, I want to say we're down to maybe, so without those, I think it would put us like maybe 2 short. So
Okay.
we're doing quite well considering.
Your
And most communities are probably averaging 60%?
It depends on which agency you look at, but anywhere from, as far as the amount that they have, anywhere from 60 to 70% on their staffing levels is.
Which makes them want to leave and come to places like Borger.
I'm all about recruiting
Which
if they're good
we'll
officers
take
too.
them if they're
Yeah.
high quality.
Yeah, if they're high quality and meet our standards, I'm happy to have them.
Yeah.
So.
And that's, we're 4 short right now, but that includes after we added the new SRO. So we've got the 33 positions now. So with 4 short, we're at 29 officers. When I first started, when I was hired at the police department as a full-time officer, our sworn strength was 23. And it was not uncommon for us to be 4 short back then, taking 23 down to 19. So, not that I don't, give them any bad credit, but by the investment in both the school district, increasing SRO positions, and the council adding positions over those years, which that was kind of when we added 3 officers several years back. I think a lot of that was to kind of help mitigate some of that turnover. So we still today, 29 4 short, you take out the 5 SROs, we're at 24, which was the patrol strength when I started when we were at full strength.
And that reflects this council's desire to provide a capable, large enough police force, certainly bigger than most cities our size, to address the safety issues we have.
Sure.
We're trying to take care of our citizens.
Yeah.
And you've got to have rested bodies that are of high morale,
Sure.
with the right attitude to deal with the public.
Yes, sir.
And I think we have that.
Yes, sir.
And we expect that to continue.
And I think we have 2 good leaders right here, so.
Appreciate that, ma'am.
Appreciate that too.
We're blessed with good people. So.
And we've had past good leaders too, Brandon.
Oh, that laugh out loud, I'm sorry.
If there's nothing else, then I'll entertain a
Thank you.
motion.
I move to authorize the chief of police to execute the fiscal year 2024 access forfeiture sharing agreement between the City of Borger Police Department and the DEA Amarillo RO HIDTA Task Force Group.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And it passes. Item 12, consider and take appropriate action to adjourn.
I make a motion that we would adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we have adjourned. Thank y'all.